it comes to Python, right? So we are having this insight that Python is a programming language. Now, most of us are from engineering backgrounds, of course, right? So when I say programming language, it is very clearly understandable that why programming language is there, right? So it's used to write a kind of a software, all right? So we write a software which runs on OS, all right? So we are trying to write a software which runs on some operating system. That is the key agenda, that why we use programming language. Now, why we write a software, or what exactly a software will mean? Software simply solves a problem, but whenever we have to write a software which will solve a problem, it will always be with respect to time. So we need to consider that there is something known as time which should be saved. Now imagine you are writing a Python program, and it is taking time which a manual activity is taking less time with respect to a manual activity, right? So your software takes more time. So hence my software has no sense. So we need to understand, whenever I write a program, it is going to be a software, and software is going to solve a problem, and that problem should be solved in the least effective time. So if we are unable to achieve this target, our software will have no meaning. So this is one of the prime agendas which I would like to tell to everyone, right? So whenever we write software, so this time is the biggest thing, and we have this term called time complexity in the field of computer science, right? So time complexity is something which we will generally look on to when we write a Python script or a Python program. Now a Python program typically is known as Python module. So in general term, we say it as a Python module, or sometimes we even say that it's a Python script. So typically when we say Python script, it generally is something where some hardware is gonna get involved, right? So in a software world, it's a module, whereas when I use it as a script, something where we are going to deal with some hardware, so we can write as a script, or it can be servers, right? So when it comes to the client server model, when it comes to the networking model, so these things, they can be referred to as these are the scripts. Now let me just spend a moment and make you guys understand typically what happens when we execute a program. Now we are on the OS, so this is our operating system, and below the OS what we have is we have a compute unit. Let's say it's hardware, right? So when I'm going to write a program, consider our very native language, let's say C++. So I will write one application with C or C++, right? So it can be C or C++. Now what we need to do is we need to do a compilation of a program, and then we get some other codes like this myapp.obj, and then we pack it to get some executable. Now this is a traditional concept, right? So this myapp.exe is the one which is supposed to be executed by the OS. Now having said this, obj, right, is not executed by the OS directly. So it has to take it in some shape. When it comes to a language called Java, let's say myapp.java. So if you are writing a Java program, you again need to compile it. And what you get is something like myapp.class. So here in Java, you need not to pack. So in the OS, yes, Lalit, I'll come on to that point. So in the OS, we got something like Java Virtual Machine. So it's a typical software. So there is a query from Lalit, what exactly means the term compilation? So assume that we have oranges, right? And these are the source. So we need to come up and put these oranges in a juicer, and what we get is we get a liquid juice. Now this liquid juice is my result. Alright, so this liquid juice is the result. So this is the source, this is the result. But if you want to drink this liquid juice, you need to pack it. So what you will do it, you will pack it in some glass, right? So pack it in some glass. Now this becomes my end result. Now in computer science, whenever you write a Java program or C++ program or a Python program, we call it source. So over here, these programs, myapp.cpp or myapp.java, they are the source codes, the programs which you have written. But these programs, they are supposed to be given to some juicer. Now that juicer over here is your compiler. So compiler is another software which is going to do a compilation and it will generate some end result, or you can say it's a liquid juice. Now this is supposed to be executed by the OS. Alright Lalit, I hope, and others guys, I hope we are good to go. So what you can do is you can just type in a smiley onto the chat box. So in case I asked for the acknowledgements, right? So I may ask for acknowledgements that are we good to go or not. So you can just type in a smiley, right? So that we can understand. Okay, so now this myapp.class goes to the Java virtual machine. This goes like this. Now we are not supposed to discuss this in detail, right? That's something which is not required for us to understand, right? But I'm just putting up to make you guys have a fair understanding how Python is different from others. Now let's say I write a Python program, myapp.py. So guys, in Python, that's it. So in the OS, we'll have a Python virtual machine. Now when I say in the OS, it means there is a system software. So let me come up and explain these two terms as well. So this is Python virtual machine. Now for Python, we don't care about compilation. It is directly given to this Python virtual machine. Now OS further interacts with the hardware. So when I say compute unit, it means your processor. So the three angles, if you see now, C++ we had more work to do, Java we had less work to do, and Python we have literally no work to do when it comes to execution of a Python program. That is the benefit. So Python is interpreted. So I'll now describe all these terms. Python is interpreted. Now compilation means that you're gonna generate a liquid juice out of your source, whereas Python program means that you're gonna eat the fruit directly. So there's a difference now, right? So don't generate the juice, you eat the fruit. Now Python virtual machine, so I have another query, so just give me a moment. Okay, so Python virtual machine is available in all the operating systems. Now that is the query from Saurabh. So it's not like that. Python virtual machine is not available in Windows. It is available in the Linux environment, right? So if you're using Mac or if you're using Linux, so it will be pre-installed. But at the same time, you need to upgrade it as per the today's world. So guys, this Python virtual machine is not available in all the operating systems, but if you are a Linux environment person, then it will be available, but you need to come up and cross check the version of your Python. JVM is available in all the operating systems, all right? So that's the standard now, but at the same time, we know that there is a necessary steps which have been reduced in our Python execution, right? Now that is where Python comes into the industry, where all the unnecessary steps are reduced. So eat the fruit directly rather than working on the liquid juice. So that is one of the key concerns when you write a Python program. So how that Python program will be executed. So I think this part is clear to everyone, right? That how a Python program is executed as compared to the others. Now we'll work on this Python virtual machine, or I can say Python installation. Alright, so I'll just type in two keywords on the Google, Python installation, and I'll get the very first link called download Python. Now this is known as Python interpreter, or you can say the virtual machine, which is going to execute your Python program. So here you can see download Python 3.7.4, which is the latest version, right? So there is a one older version called Python 2.7. But this is something which we will not be working on, because nowadays it's all Python 3.7. But you guys, as a network engineer, you need to come up and test that if you are configuring some routers, whether 2.7 is supported or 3.7 is supported. So accordingly you need to use one. And there is a small difference in these two versions. So there is some syntactical difference in these two versions. So once you know programming language Python, you'll be able to understand the differences very soon. All right. So guys, the first thing first, you need to download this latest Python and you need to install it in your system. So installation process is very easy. So in case you are unable to follow it, you can just refer Google or YouTube. So installation process is something which is not a challenge at all. Once you install the Python, you can open up your command prompts on Windows, or on Linux environment, you can open up your shells. And just type in the keyword called Python, and then you can say hyphen version. So what you see is it says the Python version is 2.7.15. So it means the Python is installed with the version of 2.7.15. But for me, there are two Pythons. So one is Python, which automatically means Python 2.7, and another one is Python 3. So when I say Python 3 hyphen version, so it comes out to be 3.6.5. So I'm not, using the exact latest 3.7, but it is not that old as well. So guys, this is Python 3.6.5, right, which I'm using. So you can very easily check your Python installation on your system by opening the shell, and that can be taken care easily. Okay, so we got a query from Asim. So it is because Python VM is not available in Windows OS, we need to make it .exe rather than directly running .py. Exactly. So Asim has a query. So if I write a Python program, now why I need to create an exe file? So this is only for the Windows, right? So when you have to write an exe file, so exe file, you can consider it as a glass with the liquid juice. So I'm going to come up and write down this terminology. So let's say there is a myapp.cpp, right? So you compiled it. So you get myapp.obj. Now I need to pack it. So when I pack it in myapp.exe. So now this terminology should be more clearer. So typically myapp.exe is one of your glasses with the liquid juice. Or I can even say that this is an executable file for Windows OS. So what it typically means now. So when it comes to the operating system will extract obj file from the exe. So whenever you are creating an exe, it's a container which contains your code, and that will be executed further. So on Windows environment, yes, you need to create exe in case you don't have your Python virtual machine installed. At the same time, PVM has to be there. So otherwise you won't be able to execute it as well. So exe is just a kind of an installation file. Okay, so Vinay says, can we use a batch file as well as along with the exe file? Of course. So batch file is where we have a shell script on Linux environment. So we got a batch file on Windows environment. That's just for doing some automation, right? That can be taken care of. So Vinay and Asim, I hope the queries are resolved. That Asim, that will be an executable file, so you need not to write down the commands to execute the Python script. So when you will double click on the exe file, it will be automatically executed. That is the reason. So if I have to execute a Python program, so typically I will come and write a command. So I'll say a Python, and then I will write down myapp.py, and then I'll hit enter, right? So there will be a different way to execute a Python script. So when you write an exe file or create an exe file, so it will automatically be executed. So that is the kind of a batch file as well, the query from Vinay.
Maybe that's the reason why we need exe or batch file on Windows. Because
Yes.
suppose I uh, 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 prepare a program on a machine which has PVM installed, but I'm gonna use it or run it on the machine which doesn't have. So if I compile, if I save it in an exe, I can easily execute it.
No, no. See, I'll tell you that is one of the concerns. But Python virtual machine or Python installation should be there on the OS. Else it won't work for us. Even the exes won't work for us, because when you are going to run the exe, so we need to understand. So exe is just a
Mhm.
container. It's just a container like a glass which contains the juice, right? So till time your container will have the code. So OS knows that this container I can read and I can extract and I can do the things. So you can even say exe is kind of an executable code, right? So it's gonna get execute. The moment you do a double click on exe file, it's gonna execute. So it's way more easier than executing a command to execute a Python program.
It's mandatory to have a PVM installed.
Yes, 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 yes. If you don't have a Python installation, your Windows OS do not know where is Python installed, and even if you have an exe, right, it won't be able to execute it,
Mm.
because internally the exe file internally has the Python scripts running, right? So
Mhm.
those dependencies, they will not be executed. So exe is for our convenience, that when we double click on it, it's gonna get executed. That's how it's gonna work for us. So good to go.
Yes.
All right, Arvind as well. Okay, great, great, great. So guys, once we install this Python, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take you to another installation setup called PyCharm. So next I'm going to type in these keywords called PyCharm. So what I'll do is I'll very quickly share the links over the chat as well. So this is for Python installation. Next one is PyCharm installation. So what is PyCharm? PyCharm is an integrated development environment. You can say it's a software which is used by the Python developers to create Python scripts or Python programs. All right, so I'm just gonna share this link so you can install the PyCharm as well. All right, so this goes the link to the PyCharm. So other way around, you can even code on the notepads, but that's something where it's not professional. This is highly professional software solution which we use. Okay, so any query by anyone? So two installations which we need to see is, one is the Python setup, another one is the PyCharm. PyCharm is a software. I say it as IDE, Integrated Development Environment. So it's gonna use our installed Python, and it will help us to write Python scripts with ease and execute them and test them. So it's gonna work well for us. So let's see how this PyCharm works for us. So I'm just gonna open this PyCharm. All right, guys. So just give me a moment. So it's loading one of my projects. So I'll just close it and we'll see it from the scratch how the PyCharm will work for us. Okay. So this is how we have the console to the PyCharm. All right. So when it opens, this is the GUI which you will be able to see PyCharm. So it says to create a new project. So when you open PyCharm, it will ask you to create a new project. Now once I have clicked on create new project, so it's gonna ask me the name of the project. So what I'm gonna do is, so I'm gonna say Python sessions, or I'll say Python network 19. So I'll just say this name to the project, Python network 19. Now what you see is, for using Python, this guy PyCharm is going to use this Python 3 for me. If you can see, right, the interpreter is Python 3. So you need not to change it, so it is taken care automatically. So now I will say create. So this will create a new project for us. All right, so here we are, guys, right? So this is how a PyCharm environment will look to us. In the left hand side, I see a folder called Python Network 19. So when I click on it, I see there is a virtual environment. VENV stands for virtual environment. So it has a code for our Python, right? So Python 3.6 is loaded for me. So I need not to work in this directory. So I'll just come up here, do a right click, and I will create my very first Python script, right? So I'm gonna say a new Python file. So guys, if you see over here, so I'll go to my project name, do a right click, and then I'll say a new Python file. So let us name this Python file as session1 and then say OK. I need not to say .py in the end. So this is by default a Python file. So you say OK. Now this is our Python file. Or you can even say this is a Python script, or you can say Python module. Now what I'm gonna do is, I'm just gonna say a print statement which says hello. So this is a very basic first, you can say, a program of yours, right, in a Python language. So print hello. I think this is self-explanatory. It's very easy. So print is a function which takes the input as hello, and it's just gonna print it on the console. So I'm gonna do right click and say run session1. So the moment I say run session1, so you see the below output coming up as hello. So I think this part of how we create a Python program is clear to everyone. So you're gonna go into your Python project, do right click, create a new Python file. So name it any name of your choice, and then you need to come up and write one command, right? So I have just written one command called print hello, and it just prints out hello for us. So this is a very basic Python program, right, which we have created. So now what is the next thing which awaits for us in Python programming environment? So guys, in our today's session, so now I'll be focusing on the language fundamentals. So today we're gonna explore what are storage containers. All right, so what are storage containers? When I say storage containers, so it means how we will store data. So so what I'm gonna do is just open up GNS3 GitHub. So guys, I hope all of you would be knowing about this GNS3. So I'm just gonna open this GitHub where GNS3 has kept their Python code repositories. So what you see is, for anything as a virtual machine, or let's say as a server, I'm just gonna open them. So there are these various, files. Let us say this setup.py, it's a Python file where we see some Python code coming in, right? So what we see is some class coming in, some defined statements coming in, some setup kind of statements they are coming in. So till time I don't know what is Python, I won't be able to debug them. Now, this is one of the reasons that why we need to first of all come up and understand what Python programming language in a basic means, right? So for that, today I'm gonna come up and take you to the storage containers which stores data. So what exactly this means, right? Storing of data. So software industry works on an architecture called model view controller. So we work on an architecture called model view controller. And what this architecture means, let's say I want to create an Uber application. So Uber ride sharing app I want to create. So model means data storage. For example, source location, destination location, and there can be type of cab, there can be customer details, there can be driver details. So this comes under the model, right? So when you have to come up and book one Uber cab, so this is where we are going to store some data, right? Now this data in a program is not stored permanently, it is stored temporarily. So when I'm talking about model or storage containers in programming languages, so model in programming language means storage of data in RAM that is temporary. So always understand this point, right? So whatever the data you will write in your program is stored temporarily in the RAM when we execute the program. So it's not gonna be permanent. Now what is the next part called view? So view means GUI. So graphical user interface which we need to show some data to the customer, or you can even say when we want a user to punch the data, so we need this GUI which means view. And what is controller? So controller over here means our logic. So logic means some conditions. For example, finding the shortest path. When I'm booking a cab, so there should be a shortest path. Along with it, there can be condition called least traffic, right? And there can be nearest driver. So we need to understand that if we have to write a logic, so logic always works to save time. So that is where this is how the software industry is gonna work with model view controller as one of the design patterns how to create a software, right? So same way, if you have to solve a problem in the field of networking, you need to rely on these three terms. So you need to save the data, you need to have a GUI, and you need to have some logical part where your logics will come up and solve the problems. Now in the field of networking, when you're writing a Python script with respect to hardware, you may or you may not need GUI. So you need to understand. So GUI is something which is not mandatory. So there can be Python script which can ask the data from the user on the terminal, and that's gonna work for us. All right. So guys, can I get one smiley as an acknowledgement till here? Are we good to go? What is model view controller from all of you? All right. Thank you. Now let us come to our Python program, and I'm gonna write another Python file. So let's say this is a new Python file, session 1A. Now when it comes to model, so guys, model means storage containers. So this is how I will comment. With a hash, I will be able to comment a line. So this will not be considered to be a program, right? So model means a storage container. And we have two types of models. The number one, we got single value container. Then number two, we have multi-value containers. So we got these two of the containers, and in multi-value container, I got this as homogeneous, or we have an option called heterogeneous. So now let us try to take one example and see what exactly this homogeneous, heterogeneous containers they actually mean to us, right? So we will take examples and we'll try to see. So I'm just gonna come here and open one image called engagement ring box, right? So when I say engagement ring box, so guys, here in the box, you can store only one single ring. So you need to understand what's a single value container. It's a box, right? It's a box with the data. And this box with the data will be able to store only one single value. Now at the same time, I'm going to open this cookie box. So in the images, you will see for a cookie box, it contains all the cookies. So even a much better view here, this guy, right? So it contains all the cookies. Now this is a multi-value container. It stores a lot of data, but the data is same. It's homogeneous. But when it comes to a container like this, so this is a heterogeneous container. Why? Because we have different types of cookies. All are cookies, but they are different types of cookies. Assorted cookies, you can say. So we got single value container, multi-value container, homogeneous and heterogeneous. Now let us review them with an example. All right. So let us say a router having a name. So guys, one router having a name, is it a single value container or a multi-value container? So the name of a router will be a single value container or a multi-value container. It has to be a single value container, right? So my name may be a multi-value container as per the nicknames, right? At the same time, when I'm using Instagram or Facebook or Snapchat, I have a username. So that username is a single value container. My profile picture is a single value container. Now moving ahead, when I go to Instagram, I can upload the images as an album. Now those images uploaded as an album becomes a multi-value container. So if I have uploaded all the images, that is a homogeneous multi-value container. And when I have uploaded images along with some videos in an album, that becomes a heterogeneous storage container. So guys, a smiley awaited in case we are clearly understanding this point of model management, storage container management, single value and multi-value storage containers. Okay, so can anyone come up into the networking domain where they can try to put some inputs? What is a single value container and a multi-value container? For example, there can be multiple routers in a network. So a network is a multi-value container with the multiple routers, and every router can have a single IP address. So it's a single value container when it comes to the IP address for a router. For such examples, if you guys can come up. So guys, you can unmute yourself and you can speak out for any as such example which strikes your head. So in the networking domain, what do you think? What can be the single value containers or multi-value containers?
Homogeneous, and if it is belonging to a different client, multiple clients, it would be heterogeneous then.
All right, great. Great. Anyone else, guys, who can come up with the examples? Great, Asim.
Oh, Isham, for that heterogeneous, I just have one doubt that when you call it multi-value container, does that mean if in one container we have a different type of data we are storing, then we call
Yes.
it heterogeneous?
Yes. So in one single
So,
container, when you put different type of data,
so
right, that becomes
extension
heterogeneous.
means photo and video, which you give the example,
Yes,
they are
yes,
different type. If they have a same type of output, might be they are we taking it from a different source, but they will treat as a homogeneous.
yes. If the type is same. For example, all our images, right? So that's homogeneous.
Yep.
So if we got images, we got videos, that becomes heterogeneous.
So in that case, just to see, so the example you given for the different customer, so that all will be a same type of data. So it will be a homogeneous as per my understanding, but it's a new thing. Yeah.
All right. Great.
Ashan, one more question: is IP address a single or multi-value? Because it's holding a four different decimal values. It should be multi-value container.
Yes, it can be a multi-value container, but at the same time, we got different ways to represent data. So I can represent it as a single value container with the help of a string or a textual data type, right? So that we'll see very soon, very soon. So
So
typically,
string
when
is not a multi-value container.
it is a multi-value container itself, right? But when it comes to IP addresses, because it's a combination of four of these sequences, right? So
Uh-huh.
I can store the data in a string, like a textual data, like the name, and thereafter we can process it. All right, so that becomes a multi-value container. So IP address itself is a multi-value container, no doubt about the fact. And it's how you are storing data that are different types that we're gonna just see now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good to go.
Yep.
All right. So now let's say, so I'm gonna come here and say that there is a name assigned Cisco. So guys, this is very easy for us to understand. So what exactly this means over here, right? So I can say IP address is, so I'm going to come up here and write something like 192 dot, let's say 168 dot 20 dot 1. Now let's say that there is a time which goes like 2 hours. Now what are these? These are treated as single value containers. Why are they single value containers? Because the data which they are holding is one single value. So name is just Cisco. But when you look into the Cisco, it's multiple characters. In double quotes, you see it's multiple characters, right? More than one single character. So internally, it is saved as a multi-value container, but from the user end, it's a single value container. So I'm not saying that the name is Cisco and a comma and let's say CIS or something like this, right? So we're not saving it like this. So we are saving it like this. So it's a single value container. So I think the query would have been resolved. I think Vinay had a query. I just forgot who asked the query.
Got it. Yeah, that's fine.
All right. So guys, these statements which I have written below are known as creational statements. So what do they mean, right? So they mean container creational statements. So we are creating storage containers in the memory, right? So they get created in RAM area and are temporary. So writing your data is very easy. So you just give in any name of your choice. So left hand side is the name of the storage container. LHS is name of storage container and RHS is the data in storage container. Alright, so this is very much similar to what we used to do it in our notebooks in our childhood days when we were doing mathematics. So Python is same. There is no a difference when we are writing in the notebook versus in the Python program, right? This is how you create a storage container. Now, if you want, you can write an update statement. So update statements. So update statements is where we can update data in storage containers. For example, I can just change the value of IP address. So I can say IP address now is 192.168.4. So this is known as updation of the storage container. So what we had one ring in a box. It was a golden ring. You pick it out and you placed one silver ring, right? So the IP address value is modified here. So previously it was something else and now it is something else. The next statements, they are read statements to read data from containers. So how I will do it? So I will simply say print me name, then I will say print me IP address, then I will say print me the time, right? So when I will do right click and run this program, so what you see is the name is Cisco, IP address is the modified value, and the time comes out to be 2. So guys, creation of containers, updation of containers, and reading the data in the containers. Now I can make the read statements a bit more interesting by saying name is comma name, then I can say IP address is comma IP address, and then I can say time is comma time. So when you run the code here, so what you see is name is Cisco, IP address is the IP address, and the time is 2. And I can even say one more comma, and I can say hours, and then I will run the code again. So it will say time is 2 hours. So you can see now with a comma, I am able to substitute the data in the print statement. So in my session number 1 here in the project, we got a print statement, right? So we just printed something with the double quotes. But here in session 1a, I am doing printing of multiple things with a comma. So comma separation will help us to understand this, how we are substituting the data. It's like fill in the blanks. So guys, single value containers having creational statements, updation statements, and the read statements. Lastly, we have delete statements. So we have delete containers. Let's say you don't need a container, you can delete it. So I will say del, and I will say delete the IP address. And now if I'll come up and reread this IP address, run the code here and reread the IP address, it will give me an error. It says IP address is not defined. So at line number 27, if you see line number 27, it gives us an error that IP address is not defined. So this is gonna be erroneous statement. So guys, are these points clear to everyone? Can I get one smiley as an acknowledgement from all of you? I think this part of discussion is clear to everyone, right? How we create storage containers. Now, the more you work on data, the more better program you can write. Now, let me give you an example. So let's say I want to create a Zomato app. On Zomato, if I have to list a restaurant, now there can be data with respect to restaurant. There can be a name of the restaurant, there can be phone, there can be address. Now, if I start collecting more data, for example, what are the opening hours of the restaurant? What are the closing hours of the restaurant? Then what is the landmark near to the restaurant? What is the specialty of the restaurant? So the more data you have, there is high probability that you will be able to give a better solution, right? So mathematically, if I have to solve a problem, if I have data in abundance, I can use it and I can solve it in a better way. If you have less data, it's a problem, right? So whenever I'm going to write a Python program, my first focus will be on model. And when I'm writing a model, I need to understand the requirements of my program. First of all, I need to come up and understand what I'm going to write. So collect all the data which you can. All right, so now I think till here we are good to go. So we can take a short break. And after the break, we can resume the session. So I'll have a 10 minutes of break. And in the meantime, I'll just stop this